Why be better? Her. I Rest My Case is the 5th studio album by Youngboy Never Broke Again, also known as NBA Youngboy, or like people like to just say Youngboy. This is kind of a strange feeling that I have sitting down to do this, because this is my first ever proper and full review for one of his projects. But in the almost 2 years now that I've had this channel, I've listened to a lot of the work he's put out. Not everything, admittedly, but I've listened to a lot of it. He releases so many projects throughout each year. Of course, he puts out a lot of stuff, a lot of music, and I've been listening to a lot of it, but I just haven't actually reviewed it yet. So in a way, this feels sort of like a Drake situation, where I've reviewed everything that Drake has dropped since I started this channel. But no, I have yet to do that yet for Youngboy. I've done reactions to the ones that I've heard, so it just, you know, it's kind of a weird mix of emotions here going on. Most of Youngboy's work I really have not been impressed with that much. I don't think he's like one of the worst rappers right now, even though I do think I recall in my reaction to the collab that he did with DaBaby, I said that like it was 2 of the weakest rappers in the game right now. I don't know if I completely would say that for Youngboy. He, I think, has a distinct enough personality on the mic, and there have been more than a few songs by him that I have liked in the past, and you know, a couple of projects I think have been okay, but for the most part I do just think that he puts out too much music. He is too consistent. By that I mean just by the amount of music that he comes out with. I mean, it's insane. I think last year, I don't know how many projects he released. I want to say at least 6 maybe. It was just so many freaking albums and mixtapes. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, I really want this dude to just take a break, just take his time with his next release, even though I'm sure we're probably gonna get another tape maybe February or March, maybe even before the end of this month. I don't know. I mean, who knows? It's up in the air. While I do respect the work ethic and always, you know, working on something new, you know, for sure, like there is something admirable about that and being on the grinds with his music. But man, I just really think he needs to just stop and really focus on his next release and try to come out with something more substantial. Not to say that he hasn't had anything of substance in the past, but I would argue that a lot of it has been lacking in that region. And honestly, this album is really not much different from a lot of what else I've heard from him. A lot of this does feel like just a bunch of unnecessary tracks padded together onto this album, with a few highlights, a few notable songs that I did enjoy. It's kind of just the run-of-the-mill Youngboy experience that I have listening to one of his projects. I am bored and often just scratching my head at the decisions he makes within a release, but then there's a few moments where I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of nice. This is the potential that we could have with him. And I do think it's important to note that my lack of enjoyment with a lot of this album has virtually nothing to do with the lyrics. I understand that he is not an artist that is lyrically focused. He is mainly known, and his strengths come from, like I said, his personality, his delivery, his sometimes emo-inspired vocals that he'll lay onto tracks from time to time, and the relatively stripped-back production that does accompany a lot of his projects. I am aware that that is the appeal of Youngboy, in addition to just how frequently he comes out with stuff. So even though there were definitely more than a few lines that did have me rolling my eyes in this thing, that was certainly not something I was focusing on too much, and I knew that that was not something I had to prioritize for the overall critique of this thing that I'm giving to you right now. We start things off in a somewhat humorous way with a skit entitled Top Girls, where we hear these two people talking, and one of them's like, what are you listening to? And oh, it's the new Youngboy. And who's Youngboy? Oh, you're missing out, you don't know Youngboy? Kind of a exchange going on, setting up Youngboy as sort of a mysterious figure, you could say. The first actual song on here comes in the form of Black, which is also one of the singles from this record at this point, and I think it's easily one of the better tracks on here. I'm liking the rumbly bass, the industrial flair with this song as well. There's a kind of catchy synth line that pops in every now and then, and I think it has some of YB's best flows throughout this entire album. The punk rap inspired Bitch Yeah is one that I really like as well. It's a track on here that attempts to go for an edge and an aggressive demeanor, and I think is actually pretty successful at that. And I do like the Bitch Yeah refrain towards the end of the track. I think it's pretty cool. Bitch, get on your knees, ho. Come on, suck it with no teeth, ho. Okay, sorry. This is followed by the track Red, which is for some reason notably louder sounding with the mix. I mean, it just feels like it's on an entirely different album or from an entirely different album. I mean, not that I really have a problem with it, but that was sort of the first thought I had when it started playing. But I actually think this one is pretty cool too. It feels very Whole Lotta Red inspired. I mean, to the point when I'm just waiting for the Wake Up Filthy, you know, producer tag that Filthy has. The next two songs on here, Double Cup and Fight With My Sheets, are tracks that see Youngboy going into more of an emo rap lane, which I'm not totally against, actually. I think that he has sounded okay in this style. There were a couple of tracks I remember off of his previous studio album, The Last Meadow, that I thought were decent, kind of followed this structure. But I don't know what to say other than they just feel pretty stale to me. You know, okay guitar riffs that accompany both of these ones. Double Cup, I remember actually having a moment with these kind of cool layered harmonies that I believe were Youngboy's own vocals kind of stacked on each other. YB does also provide a somewhat interesting lyrical idea in Fight With My Sheets when he says, they said there's a fire in the building. I heard you was inside of the building. You stuck inside something toxic and it's killing. You know, obviously a metaphor that I think could be interpreted in different ways. Just Like Me, later on the album, is one that is a little bit more experimental sounding, so I'll give her credit for that. But I don't think it really goes over that well. I still don't think the production is all that great on here. The synth that is in the song at moments sounds like this weird farty sandpaper quality. It does not sound good. And staying on the topic of production, the next song, Ride Me, I think has way too much bass, way too heavy in the mix. But even when it's cut out, like I could hardly hear anything else. But then when it's in, you can't hear the rest of the instrumental hardly at all. Not My Friend is one that I think is a standout on here. He has some decent flows in this one. There's a cool kind of buzzy bass sound going, and an electronic keyboard that has some decent melodies at times. And one of the more memorable refrains in the album, saying that he might as well send this girl roses. He doesn't say girl, but you know, that's the PG version of what he says. Groovy also sees YB's pen game becoming a little bit interesting at moments. He mentions his kids and the money that he makes for him to provide for them. And I'm honestly just now thinking of this, that maybe that's why he releases so much music, to provide for his kids. And he also mentions how people talk about him and discuss him as if they know him personally, sort of hinting at there being sort of fake fans and maybe a lot of yes men. And honestly, that kind of also is targeting me. I'm, you know, assuming what he does, but you know, I'm a victim now to his lyrics, I guess. That's honestly pretty much all I want to say about individual tracks on this record. I could talk more about certain songs that I skipped over, but I think you guys get the point. As I mentioned earlier, this is kind of the stereotypical experience I have with one of his albums. I said it in the intro, but I'll just sort of try to rephrase it here. Before I put on one of his projects, I'm always just sort of hopeful and optimistic that maybe this one will actually be one that I like and one that I may want to revisit in the future. But then there ends up being all this filler, all this fluff, a bunch of tracks that sort of just don't add up to anything in the end, although there are maybe a few tracks that I kind of like from it. So yeah, this one was just kind of another disappointing record from him. I have yet to like anything from this guy at this point. I don't mean to be a hater at all. I'm certainly not a Youngboy hater by any means, because I have liked some of his stuff in the past. I think he's made some good songs. I think he has the potential to put out something good, but just hasn't yet, in my opinion, from what I've heard. I'm not going to give up on him though. I'm still going to keep up with his music and still keep up with his releases. I do have hope that he will come out with something that I will like at some point. You You know, it's actually sort of a benefit to him putting out so much music. Like, at some point, there has to be something that I like from him. I mean, come on. As for now, though, this is another one that just didn't really do it for me. I would give I Rest My Case a 4.5 out of 10. It's another one from him that I just have a lot of mixed feelings on, but I'm certainly more on the negative side with this. I would like to know what you guys think, though, if any of you have listened to this yet. Maybe this will be like with my first album I reviewed last year, which was Dawn FM, where I was kind of in the minority, not liking that album very much. Maybe a lot of people like this. I don't know. I've heard this is actually getting somewhat positive reviews right now, but honestly, typically with music critics, I'm really not on par with what a lot of them think and feel. So who knows? I do appreciate you all watching if you did, and I also do just want to mention my last two videos, not the things I didn't review, but my top 10 albums and movies videos. I want to recommend that you guys check those out if you haven't already. I feel pretty good about them. Spent a long time editing those, and as of right now, they are actually getting a good amount of views. So I like them. I think they're decent videos, so check them out if you want to. But for now, I'm going to sign out. Peace.